Welcome to the Shepherd's Pie, a slice of hope to raise faithful kids, where we focus on topics that impact young people today. I'm Antony Barone Kolenc. I'm a father of 5 who served in the Air Force for 21 years. I'm now a law professor and a columnist for Practical Homeschooling magazine. I'm also the author of The Harwood Mysteries, an inspirational medieval fiction series for kids aged 10 and up. Here on the Shepherd's Pie, we want to inform, inspire, and help you to raise happy, healthy, faithful kids, whether you're a grandparent, a homeschooler, a youth minister, anyone. In today's episode, I speak with Joseph Mauck, an author, actor, screenwriter, and acting coach, and we talk about the importance of the arts for our kids, along with some of the risks our kids want to pursue a career or even just a hobby in acting or drama. In the entertainment segment of the show, guest reviewer Steven McEvoy discusses Corinna Turner's anthology of stories, A Saint in the Family. You know, when I was a teenager, I used to love acting in our school plays every summer. Believe it or not, I played Tony in West Side Story, and I was Perchik in Fiddler on the Roof. And I'm proud to say, in hindsight, that they were pretty cringe-worthy performances. But I loved it. I loved what I was doing, and I loved being around the theater. And many of our kids today are interested in theater and the arts. So often they can imagine themselves as movie stars or great stage actors or the next YouTube singing sensation. Is this something that we should encourage in them, considering some of the concerns with the lifestyle of those who are in theater and Hollywood, as well as concerns with perhaps some of the morals of those who might train our kids in the arts? Well, in the interview segment today, my guest, Joseph Mauck, has a lot of opinions on this and a lot of experience to draw from. And we talk about why it still is a worthwhile endeavor for our kids to stay interested in the arts. I am here today with Joseph Mauck. He is truly a Renaissance man of the arts. Not only is he an author, he's an actor, a screenwriter, an acting coach. He has directed stage at Notre Dame's Summer Shakespeare Festival for high school seniors. He's published a techno thriller with Simon & Schuster named Claw, and his latest novel, The Cross and the Godless, was released in 2021. He lives in South Bend, Indiana, where he still works part-time at Notre Dame University. Joseph, welcome to the Shepherd's Pie.
Hey, Tony, how are you?
I am doing great and glad to have you on the show. If you could, just a little bit, give us a sense of, how you got involved with the arts, and we'll go from there.
Well, when I was a kid, I always enjoyed the entertainment industry and got more interested in high school, of course. And then I took some summer school courses at Northwestern University and eventually ended up at the American Academy of Dramatic Art in New York City. When I graduated from that, I went on the road and pretty much paid my dues as a traveling actor, sleeping on the floor of the bus and going to the next town. And eventually I went back to New York and I was a studio manager for the Corner Loft studio in the Village. Also did some off-Broadway. But about that time, I wanted to have a family, raise some kids, and it was clear that it was going to be pretty difficult as a stage actor to do that. And I didn't want to be on the road forever. So I moved to Los Angeles with my future wife, and I really started to get interested in writing screenplays and started to toy around with the idea of writing some novels and turned away from acting at that point. But the dramatic training that I had and all of that experience stayed with me and really is the backbone of my writing. So I suppose I consider myself a dramatic writer.
I know that your most recent novel, The Cross and the Godless, has a strong faith component in it. But as you're kind of going through your background, it sounds like most of what you were doing was not really faith-based. Why did you decide to kind of make this transition where you're now writing more about faith-based issues?
Well, the truth is I got sucked into Hollywood just like anybody else, and loved the colorful life. Lived the fast lane, not too fast, and I was never did the drug thing. Thankfully, I saw a lot of people get hurt that way. Eventually, some years later, when I had moved back to the Midwest, it was clear that I was farther away from God than I wanted to be. And I gave it some serious thought, and it was an emotional time for me. And I came to the faith with about as much humility as I could possibly bring, and found myself searching to do things for God, to follow what He would want me to do according to the gifts that He gave me. And He gave me the gifts of writing and of being a dramatist and of being a teacher. And so I started to focus my attentions with those people who would appreciate someone who loved God and followed God. And Jesus became my guide.
And I see that you've also, at least in recent years, been working closely with teenagers, helping them with the arts. How did you get involved starting to work with the young?
That started when I had just come back from Los Angeles to Chicago. I started working for Barbizon Schools. They hired me to prepare some audition curriculum because a lot of their models, they had excellent models that get very good contracts in some of the best agencies in the world, but they don't know how to act too well. And some of the best models don't know how to speak and have a difficult time preparing themselves for auditions. That's the challenge that I had, and I really loved it. You get some of these young women who are so shy, or they're so uncomfortable with the fact that they're growing up fast. They're surrounded by a lot of people who admire them all of a sudden, and they don't know how to handle it. So in a business sense, it's important to teach them the acumen that they need when they go in for a meeting and how to present themselves. They get a lot of help from the agencies, but nevertheless, they still have a rough time communicating and doing the best they can as a business person. It takes a long time to learn that, especially when you're a 17-year-old model. As far as some of the other actors, it was strictly teaching them how to audition to get the job because, as we know, it's very competitive and they have to have training from the moment they get in the door.
And you also direct young people in stage productions, at least with Notre Dame a little bit. Can you speak to that? What is your experience with that?
Well, I had the experience having studied Shakespeare going all the way back to summer school at Northwestern and at the American Academy. And then I did a season at the Alabama Shakespeare Festival. The training allows you to pass along to the younger generation some of the strengths, the talents, the capabilities. As far as Notre Dame is concerned, they wanted me to teach a summer program for high school students that really had some experience. They had done some readings and scene study in high school, and their parents wanted them to learn a little bit more, and that's what they were looking for summer activity. And that also gave me a chance to pass along a lot of the training and preparing to do a live theater. There's so much that they gather in for themselves personally and how to express themselves. And it's wonderful to see the young people grow and express themselves confidently. And by the time I'm through with them, they know what to do. So I really did enjoy that a lot.
We're so Hollywoodized in this world and in this country that, we love the cult of celebrity and everybody wants to, get involved with acting and this kind of thing. So my question is, what is it about drama and the arts that you find is something that's beneficial to our young people? Should we be encouraging them to get involved with drama and the arts? And if so, why?
Well, that's a great question because I feel very strongly that our culture took a big hit about 50, 60 years ago when many of the school systems across the country canceled formal reading out loud. I remember my mother telling me in the late 1930s and 1940s, she memorized Hiawatha. That was her assignment, written by Longfellow. If you've ever seen that poem, boy, that's a monster. but she had to do it, and everyone in her class had to do it. So we lost all that. I don't know why we stopped, but kids need to know how to express themselves properly. Now, once you get into the drama, and you're talking about not just a speech, but dialogue, that lends itself to training and learning how to control your emotions, learning how to express yourself and provide the room and the give and take for other people to disagree with you in real life. And yet you can win that argument. You can persuade that person in a friendly and peaceful way that benefits everybody. And there's so many people today who do not have those skills. They're looking at a screen, some screen, doing one thing or another, but they're not speaking to other people as much as we used to. And we need to develop those kinds of communications again that are heartfelt and honest and truthful. Forget about all this, all these many, many distractions that we've built up to sell things to these kids, because that's not the way to go.
It seems to me that we're actually heading in the opposite direction from what you're saying, that kids are more and more stuck with their face in their devices, interacting over videos and posts on social media, less and less doing this more outward expression, I think, that you're talking about. What would be your advice to people who work with youth? How do we get kids out of those phones and doing some of the types of activities that you're talking about?
Well, I'll tell one thing that appeals to them is their ego. Teenagers, they grab onto a certain idea, boy, and they'll back it up as best they can. One of the things that I did in my audition class, which was a huge hit for the parents as well. Let me describe it. I had about 24 young ladies between the age of 14 and 24, and I got a small camera. I put it on a tripod, and I had them all read the same thing, which was Juliet's speech on the balcony from Romeo and Juliet. It is not difficult. The illusions are not complex, but they vary so much because some people spoke too softly. They didn't speak well. They didn't express themselves physically. All these things. And we did it one at a time. So everybody was taking the same risk. Everybody had to get over their shyness right then. It was the first day of class, I think. Anyway, by the time we were done, it was about a 12-week course, I think. I had them do it again. Now, the difference was night and day. But more importantly to me is that the child was able to watch this one at a time with their parents present, the before and the after. And they all knew immediately the improvement that had taken place. And they could understand if you just do it and you work at it, read it out loud, bring it into the conversation, engage your parents in conversation. And they got a lot out of it. And that's just one of many ways we can overcome this, but we have to bring that kind of teaching back to the schools in general. Let these kids express themselves. Let them fall on their face a little bit. It doesn't hurt. They'll be all right. And if they're a little bit shy and a little bit embarrassed, it's a way to get over that too.
Now, of course, I think for many parents, the idea of getting their kids involved with the arts and drama and movies or something along those lines could be a bit of a double-edged sword. So, some of these art schools bring with them a lot of different other cultural related baggage. And I guess I'm wondering, are you seeing any challenges coming from the culture that are not positive and helpful for our youth?
Oh, absolutely. As you and I know, Tony, the best way to help protect young people as they go out into the world and need to express themselves in business or in any number of different environments is the love of God and the protection of that faith brings. It helps you recognize, and these kids can learn to recognize what is not right for them. But it takes the helping hand of parents and other adults in their lives to carry that out and give them the confidence that they can mix with people who are not faithful. And the people who are not faithful, of course, you have to be courteous to them. You have to do business with them. You have to be on the stage with them. You have to be in the makeup room with them. You have to communicate with them on a number of different levels that have nothing to do with the actual work. On a social level, actors have related, they don't just go home at the end of the day. They go out to dinner at 2 in the morning, sometimes for many, many months at a time. So you live a crazy lifestyle when you have a hit show and 6 days a week, and you have to be able to apply that discipline. I suppose faith and discipline, it comes down to that.
All right, so let me ask you a little bit about your novel, The Cross and the Godless. You haven't written that specifically for young kids. It's more of an adult novel, my understanding. Are there themes that you pick up in that book that are applicable to what we're talking about here?
Yes, I think so. It wasn't written for young adults, but it's written as a standard suspense thriller with a lot of political corruption and crime and the difficulties of that whole dark world that we're so fascinated with, that we want to see these movies and we want to see these law and order shows. So crime continues to be an attractive entertainment. But I would say, as far as The Cross and the Godless is concerned, you have characters that are challenged, their faith is challenged in the course of the story, and they have to, my protagonist, Steve Rodriguez, who's an FBI agent, finds himself challenged constantly and has to center himself time and time again on his faith and reach out to God through prayer to help him get through the crisis that I've created for him. There's another woman who has had a very difficult time, and she's confronted with a very serious problem, which I won't get into too much. You'll catch up on it right away. It happens pretty soon, pretty quickly in the book. You see what's going on. But I mention this because her faith is what gets her through, and prayer gets her through. And I think that it's the kind of book that strengthens the Catholic perspective of life today, so that I encourage Catholics to read the book because the characters are Catholic, most of them. They aren't afraid to talk about their faith as they would in real life, whereas Hollywood always edits that part out, you know. They say, well, maybe they pray, maybe they don't, but we're not going to put it in.
That's a longtime complaint of mine also. I feel like we're not representing real life. We're representing, some life in some sort of society where God has zero impact on people's lives. And, it's interesting. You're talking about your characters. And again, I guess bringing it back to teens, especially in the arts, I don't think that praying or being particularly religious is probably one of the hallmarks that I think about when I think of some of the arts communities that our kids might get involved with. And I guess what I'm wondering is if, you were part of that culture, what advice might you give to parents of kids who are going to get involved with the arts?
That's a very good question. It's a difficult one, but there are ways of doing it. One of the things that I would look into on sending your daughter or your son to a summer camp, for instance. They want to take a summer camp where they're going to see other kids who are interested in acting and might not be Christians. And that's one of the first places they're exposed to an emotional interaction with people who are not Christians. And I would say, check out the counselors very carefully. Check out the institution. Have someone there that you can speak to as a parent and say, if my kid has a problem or difficulty, is there a Christian on the staff that they can go to? If they know that there's someone they can talk to, like a big brother or a big sister. And I really think that to take the time to check that out and see if that's workable, that's kind of important, I think.
So you wouldn't dissuade parents for kids who want to go to a school of the arts? You wouldn't necessarily persuade them trying to tell their kids to go do something else, would you?
No, I wouldn't, because the world is what it is. We cannot live outside of it. We've already driven ourselves into what I would call a Christian ghetto. You study history and you learn about the Jewish ghettos going back to medieval times. The ghetto was a fact. And here we have an entire entertainment industry speaking to the Christian population of the U.S. that is separate from the secular or mainstream entertainment industry. And it's evolved that way it's a long discussion. I won't go into it now. But since your children are going to be exposed to all sorts of circumstances, And they, of course, eventually will have to be equipped with the knowledge that they need to teach their children. Let's not forget that. But the most important thing is to teach them how to recognize people who do not share their faith and how to interact with them properly, but not engage in their kind of a social life.
Life does have a way of teaching us. Joseph, this has been really fascinating, and I think you've given us a lot of great advice for folks who are around the arts. Where can folks find more information about you and get a hold of your Cross and the Godless book and any of your other writings that might be available?
I'm working on getting another book together right now called Indiana Song. That's American haiku, and that will eventually be available at Barnes & Noble. And you can get The Cross and the Godless at any Barnes & Noble in the country. Gosh, Ingram is a great company. They're largely this monster distributor for the mom and pop bookstores. So if you have a bookstore that you would like to support, if you have a Christian bookstore and you say to them, I want The Cross and the Godless, they will get it through Ingram and they will get it quickly. 2-3 days, I think.
Great. Joe, it's been a pleasure having you on the show today. Thank you for sharing your time and your wisdom on this. Just appreciate having you as a guest today.
Well, thank you so much, Tony. It's great talking to you, and it's been great.
Once again, I am joined today by my guest reviewer, Steven McEvoy, who is a blogger with bookreviewsandmore.ca. He appears on various podcasts talking about books and book reviews because he's such a prolific reader. Hundreds of books each year, thousands of readers on his blog each week, and he also has the time to be a husband and father of 4 in the process. Steven, welcome again to the Shepherd's Pie.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
So what have you brought us today?
Today, I have brought you a I Am Margaret collection from Corinna Turner. The title of the collection is A Saint in the Family, which is one of the stories. The collection includes 5 short stories and 3 novellas.
All right. Now, Corinna Turner, of course, one of our CatholicTeenBook.com authors from the United Kingdom. And you mentioned this is in the I Am Margaret series. Can you tell our listeners just a little bit, what is that series?
The I Am Margaret series is a near future series where the world has been basically broken up into a few different regional governments. In the Eurogov bloc, they have a process called dissemination, where if you're not worthwhile, they will harvest you for your parts. The story begins with a young girl that knows that she's going to end up there, and she ends up in one of these facilities for people who are basically being groomed and kept healthy until they can be harvested, and wins a short story writing contest by sneaking writing out and writes a novel about the experience of being at this sort of facility. It ends up turning that government's world upside down. There are several novels, many short stories, looking at current laws in regards to assisted suicide and end-of-life care. It's something that you could actually see coming.
Yeah, it's a little scary. So where does this particular I Am Margaret collection fit in her broader series?
It kind of matters throughout the series. The unifying factor in this collection is all the stories focus around her brother, Kyle.
All right. And Kyle is the one who becomes a priest.
Correct. So if you haven't read the other stories, there are some spoilers in stories that are in this one, particularly if you haven't read The Siege of Reginald Hill or The Unexpected Guest. There are some pieces in this that definitely have spoilers for those.
So what do you like about this particular collection of stories?
Kyle has always been a fascinating character for me from the very beginning of the series. He risked his life and limb to fake his death and head out of the Eurobloc and head to the Vatican to study to become a priest. He has deep faith. And in this story, we find out how much he's willing to give to love and to serve. The collection of stories span his life from being a teenager all the way through until the end of his life. Just an incredible read. The book actually brought me to tears a couple of times. There were a couple of different points in the short series where literally my eyes were getting wet. My kids were a little amazed because that doesn't happen very often. Just very, very moving and powerful stories.
Obviously, Kyle's in the stories. I'm assuming Margaret makes an appearance.
Margaret makes several appearances. Through most of the stories, she appears at some point or another.
Now, what age range would you recommend this collection for?
This collection is a little harder and a little darker. I mean, the series is hard and dark anyways. It's kind of a mix of near future dystopian. There's some pretty dark stuff in the series. I would personally say 15, 16 and up, unless someone's a very mature reader.
But good reading, interesting, keeping you turning the pages.
Absolutely. I could not put this series down other than the point where I had tears in my eyes and literally had to put it down. I was using adaptive technology and listening to it while driving to visit my family in another town. And there were enough tears in my eyes. I literally had to turn off the book and pull off the side of the road so I could keep driving safely.
Wow. And the stories are connected. I'm assuming they're presented chronologically.
They are. And one of the things that Corinna does in this volume is that before each story, she kind of lists where this fits in and gives us a kind of a prelude, like what it's about. We get the story. After the story, we're told again where it fits in the greater I Am Margaret series, but she also tells us the story of how this particular story came about. And that makes it really interesting, particularly as someone who's read every book in the series at least once, many of them multiple times. That kind of background information was just amazing to read. Amazing writing.
Wonderful. All right, so Corinna Turner's A Saint in the Family, one of her I Am Margaret anthology collections. And Steven, thank you again for bringing this wonderful reading to us, and we look forward to having you on the show again.
As always, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the chat and the conversation.
That's all the time we have for the show today. We spoke with Joseph Mauck, author, screenwriter, and actor, about how we can engage our youth in the arts in a safe, faith-based way. And Steven McEvoy reviewed Corinna Turner's anthology, A Saint in the Family. Again, this is Antony Barone Kolenc, and this has been The Shepherd's Pie. If any of you listening today have a question for me or a topic you'd like to have us cover on the show, please drop me a line on my website at antonykolenc.com. That's AntonyKolenc.com. Also, if you visit my website, you can learn more about my historical fiction series for kids, The Harwood Mysteries. I'll end as always with my wife's favorite scripture quote from Romans 8:28. We know that all things work for good for those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. May the Lord bless and keep you this week.